The sun did not rise over Tarragon Ridge that morning so much as it limped. Dust curled in the wind like old prayers, and the air held that bitter scent of something long dead. On the main street, where two dogs fought over a piece of bone, and a drunk mumbled in the gutter, they brought the black man in chains. Jonas Creed walked without protest. His boots left no defiant scuff against the boards, no curse past his lips, just a shuffle of metal and leather, and the quiet rhythm of a man who knew judgment was never far behind him. His wrists were bound too tight, rope cutting through callous skin, but his eyes, those storm-colored eyes, never dropped to the dirt. He looked ahead, at the church with the bell that no longer rang, at the doors repurposed for courthouse use, at the people gathered, half curious, half hungry for a spectacle. They whispered as he passed. "That's him. Killed a man out on Vornstead land. White man, too. Slit him like a hog. I heard he used to be Union. Cavalry scout. No better than a savage." Children stared. Mothers tugged them close. Jonas caught a glimpse of his reflection in a broken window, bearded, bruised, with a dried trail of blood at his temple. A scarecrow in boots. Not the man he used to be. Not the preacher's son who once rode west with pockets full of psalms and ideas about honor. Sheriff Arlo Sykes followed behind, his shotgun resting in the crook of his arm, sweat staining his collar despite the morning's chill. He spat as they approached the courthouse. "Let's keep it clean, Creed," Sykes muttered. "No sermons. No martyr speeches. Judge already made space in the ground if things go sideways." Jonas didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. He'd buried the truth beneath too many miles and too many nights awake under blood-warm stars. Inside, the courthouse smelled like wet wood and old tides. The judge's bench was the pulpit repurposed. Behind it, a crucifix still hung, the arms of Christ outstretched in eternal surrender. Jonas was sat on the defendant's bench, alone. No lawyer, no kin, no ally. A man named Bo Darden had been found dead on Baroness Delilah Vorn's land, his throat open wide, blood soaking into the red earth. Witnesses claimed Jonas was seen riding from the scene with a wound of his own. Others swore they heard shouting before the shot, but no one could or would say why he'd been there in the first place. And Jonas, for his part, offered no explanation. The town called it what they needed to, murder, and they liked their judgment simple. As the courtroom filled, a hush moved like wind through wheat. Men leaned on rifles. Women held handkerchiefs. Even the judge, old Grady Henson, shifted like his seat had grown thorns. Jonas looked straight ahead, hands in his lap. His cuffs clicked softly each time he shifted. The first witness, a ranch hand from Vornstead, told of finding Darden's body by the corral, boots missing, his revolver gone. He pointed at Jonas. Saw him 2 days before just sitting on the fence, staring like he belonged there. Others nodded. Accusations floated like buzzards. Trespassing, theft, murder. None with proof. All with certainty. Still, Jonas said nothing. His silence irritated the room. It unnerved the judge. Even Sheriff Sykes, who'd never been fond of the man, but hadn't imagined hanging him, now clenched his jaw. "Do you wish to speak in your defense, Mr. Creed?" the judge asked, voice thin. Jonas slowly turned his head. His voice, when it came, was quiet. "No, sir." The gavel rapped once. Thunder echoed distantly, and in that moment, it felt like the roof itself leaned in to listen. By noon, the proceedings paused. The judge needed time, or perhaps courage. The room emptied slow, some folks lingering, casting glances that weren't curiosity anymore. They were calculation, measuring the rope, imagining the drop. Outside, Jonas sat in a holding cage nailed to the side of the old livery. Rain clouds churned over the buttes in the distance. His coat, stripped away days ago, left him shivering despite the heat. And still, he said nothing. Then came the sound of horseshoes for maybe 6, polished leather. A coach. Heads turned. The Vornstead brand was burned into the side of the red lacquered carriage, and 2 Mexican vaqueros rode ahead with rifles on their saddles. When the door opened, boots touched dust, and silence fell over the street like a drawn gun. Delilah Vorn, the Baroness of Tarragon Ridge, had arrived. Tall, veiled in black lace despite the sun, she moved with the poise of a woman used to owning every room she entered and destroying any that didn't welcome her. "Where's the judge?" she asked, voice smooth but low. Someone pointed. She didn't look at Jonas. Not at first. Just walked past, the hem of her dress whispering against the ground. Her scent lingered, rose and iron. Inside the courthouse, voices rose quickly, then fell even faster. 10 minutes later, the judge reemerged. A murmur, then a roar. She said, "What?" A man spat. Claimed he's her husband. Lying witch. But the record stood. A paper filed in Tuscaloosa County 6 months prior. Marriage between one Jonas Creed and one Delilah Vaughan. Legal. Sealed. Witnesses dead or unreachable. But valid. Jonas stared at her as she approached. "You look like hell," she said softly. "I didn't ask for this," he replied. "No, you didn't." She pulled the veil back. Her face was hard, but not cruel. A beauty aged like wine gone sharp. But neither did I. And here we are. He looked away. "Why lie?" Her voice lowered. "Because the truth won't save you." She turned to the sheriff, handed over the document, and nodded once. "I'll be testifying. He was with me the night the killing happened. All night, and I'd swear it again before God." Jonas flinched at that word. God. Sheriff Sykes read the paper, then looked at Jonas. "You're telling me this man is your husband?" "I am," she said, eyes level. "Now unlock him." Sykes hesitated. "Or I start writing names down for the governor," she added, soft but sure. "Starting with yours." The sheriff looked at the judge. "Until we sort this," Judge Henson said. The trials paused. Jonas stood, unsure whether to feel reprieve or dread. Delilah didn't touch him, not even a glance of affection, just a way to share history and the promise of something deeper than blood. A debt, a bond, a wound. As they walked away together, the town watched like dogs denied their supper. And behind them, thunder rolled. The wind cut sideways across the flats as Delilah Vaughan's coach rode away from the courthouse. Its red paint streaked with dust, its shadow long and deliberate against the earth. Inside, she sat with her gloves still on, one hand resting atop a folder of legal papers, the other clutching the polished handle of a Colt pistol hidden in her skirts. Across from her, Jonas sat in silence, wrists no longer bound, but still marked where the rope had dug into skin. "You didn't have to come," he said, finally. Delilah studied him. "No, I didn't." The land outside the window blurred past, mesquite and rabbit brush, and the occasional bleached carcass of some forgotten animal. Every now and then, the coach jostled over a dry rut, and the folder slid just enough to remind her how easily things unravel. Jonas leaned back. "Married, huh? It bought you time." "What'll it cost you?" Her eyes didn't blink. "You think time ever comes cheap, Jonas?" He looked away, out toward the Badlands. "They'll come for me harder now. You painted a bigger target." "You were already marked," she said. "I just lit a match under their lies." Jonas didn't reply, but the set of his jaw said plenty. Silence filled the space between them, dense like smoke before fire. When the coach rolled to the Vornstead gates an hour later, the ranch hand stopped mid-task to gawk. None dared speak as Delilah stepped down, heels tapping hard on stone. Jonas behind her like a man uninvited to his own burial. The ranch looked the same as the last time he'd been here, except this time, he wasn't bleeding out on the floor of the tack room. He remembered that night, 6 months ago, riding hard with buckshot in his thigh, barely able to steer, collapsing just past corral. And her, standing over him with a lantern and a gun, ready to kill or save. She'd done the latter, but not without questioning first. Inside the main house, she poured whiskey into 2 mismatched glasses and handed him one without looking. The room smelled of tobacco and old rain, walls covered in Navajo blankets, a map of cattle trails spread across the desk like a battlefield. He drank slowly, eyes scanning the place as if expecting it to vanish. "Why now?" he asked. She didn't pretend not to understand. "Because they were going to hang you," she said, "and because Bo Darden got what was coming." His gaze snapped to hers. "You know that for fact?" I know he had a temper and no patience for lesser folk. I know he was warned more than once about going after that girl in the South Quarter. He sat straighter. She's still alive? She is, Delilah answered, scared. Gone north. Folks don't believe her. Course they don't. Delilah set her glass down. Her fingers trembled once, then stilled. I wanted to let the law handle it. I told myself I wouldn't interfere, that if I stepped in now, they'd burn this place down just for spite. And now, I saw what they did to you in that courtroom. How none of them flinched when you had no counsel, not even the judge. That ain't law. That's spectacle. Jonas chuckled, low and bitter. You still believe in justice? She met his gaze, sharp as ever. No, but I believe in debts. And I owe you more than I said. He leaned forward, elbows on knees. Then say it. Her lips tightened. That night you came here, you didn't just save yourself. You warned us, me and Isaac, that the riders were coming. You told us to hide, and we did. If we hadn't, she didn't finish. She didn't need to. Jonas's face softened at the mention of Isaac, her son, a boy of 12 with quick hands and a sharper mind, half Mexican and all heart. He remembered the way the boy had bandaged his leg, eyes wide with awe, calling him sir like it meant something. He was a good boy, Jonas said. Smart, brave. Delilah's face broke just a little at the edges. They killed him anyway, she whispered. 2 weeks later. Said it was a stray shot. Said they didn't mean to, but I saw the powder burns. Close range. Jonas exhaled. Darden? She nodded once. And yet he lived until now. I needed proof. Took time. And I needed someone who could hold a gun steadier than my hand. He studied her. You really think they'll let me walk because of that paper? No, she said. But I think it'll buy us enough days to gather what we need. There are people willing to speak, if they know someone's listening. He stood and walked to the window, watched the dust devil dance across the field. You're playing a dangerous hand, Delilah. So are you? I'm not the one who just called myself the wife of a condemned man. She laughed, dry and sudden. They've called me worse. He turned, softening. So what now? Delilah walked to the desk and pulled out a folded paper, handwritten, sealed with wax. She handed it to him. What's this? List of names. Folks who saw what happened. Or part of it. Some ranchers, some drifters. One's a scout you knew, Comanche blood, quiet type. You saved his life once down near Palomino, Washington. Jonas raised a brow. He'll remember me? He does. He's already riding here. Jonas tucked the paper into his shirt. And the girl? She might come back if she knows she's not alone. For a long moment, neither spoke. Outside, thunder rolled again in the distance, closer now. The windows pulsed with wind. Delilah poured herself another drink, her hand steady this time. You should rest, she said. Storm's coming. He nodded but didn't move. I never asked you to save me, he said. No, she replied, voice quiet. But maybe you should ask what kind of woman saves a man she doesn't love, just to watch the world burn slower. He stared at her, but she didn't flinch. He'd known killers, known liars, known saints. She was none of those, or all of them at once. She turned and left the room, the door clicking shut behind her. Jonas stayed by the window as the first drops of rain began to fall, soft and steady, each one echoing louder than it should have. He watched the sky bruise and darken, felt the land hold its breath. He didn't trust her, not fully, but trust wasn't the currency here. Survival was, and maybe, just maybe, something more. Outside, lightning lit the horizon, and somewhere in the distance, a horse rode hard toward Vornstead. By morning, the storm had passed, but the land hadn't forgotten. Rain left streaks in the dust, as the earth had wept in silence, ashamed of the outburst. Jonas walked the perimeter of Vornstead, boots sinking slightly in the softened ground, the scent of wet iron hanging heavy in the air. He moved like a man in borrowed time, every step purposeful, measured, not out of caution, but reverence, like he was walking through a graveyard where names hadn't yet been carved. Delilah watched him from the porch, arms folded over a shawl, coffee cooling beside her untouched. Something about seeing him out there, not as a fugitive but as a free man, for now, unnerved her. He wasn't just surviving. He was assessing, planning, and planning meant hope. She didn't trust hope. Not anymore. By midday, the first of the names on her list arrived. The scout. He came alone on a paint horse, face wrapped in a kerchief, long braids damp from travel. Jonas met him at the corral, and for a long beat they stared, saying nothing. Then the scout dismounted and clasped Jonas's arm at the wrist, wordless and firm. His eyes were deep-set, tired but knowing. "Figured you were dead," he finally said. "Not yet," Jonas replied. They went inside, the two of them, men from different wars, different betrayals, carrying kind of silence that needed no translation. Delilah poured them both water and left them to it, retreating to her study where a rusted tin box waited on the shelf. Inside were things she hadn't dared look at in over a year. Isaac's drawings, a child's wooden horse, a bullet pulled from the wall the night he died. She didn't open the box. Instead, she unlocked the drawer beneath and pulled out the ledger, the one Bo Darden had kept. Cattle tallies, fake expenses, payout notations with initials she knew too well. One in particular caught her eye again, **JV, **Jedediah Vaughan, her late husband's brother. She'd known Jed wanted the land, that he'd hated her for holding it. But now, with Darden gone, Jed had started moving more openly, arming ranch hands, stirring trouble in town, and quietly convincing other barons that Delilah was soft, too tied to colored men and Comanche ghosts. She had no illusions. He was behind this trial, perhaps even the killing itself. Jonas knocked once before entering. His sleeves were rolled. Mud clung to his boots. The scout stood just behind him. "We got two more names willing to talk," Jonas said. "One's a half-blind cowhand who saw Darden ride out that night. Angry drunk, alone. The other's a widow. Said Darden came by her place bleeding, yelling about some girl pulling a knife on him. She willing to testify? She will be, if someone makes sure she don't disappear before the trial." Delilah met his eyes. "And you trust these folks?" "No, but I trust desperation. They've lived too long under Jed's boot. This might be their first chance to push back." The scout spoke up, voice low and rough as gravel. "There's more. Word is Jed's riding into town tomorrow, with 10 men and a new sheriff out of Grayson County." Delilah's pulse beat a little faster. "Grayson? That's Sykes's cousin." Jonas nodded. "Which means the judge won't be far behind. They'll want to fast-track the trial. No witnesses. Just rope. We won't let that happen." Delilah didn't mean to say it like that. We star. But Jonas didn't flinch. The scout gave her a long, unreadable look before stepping back outside. She closed the ledger. "I have enough in here to put Jed on the defensive," she said. "Proof of bribes, cattle laundering, collusion with Darden. Enough to stop a trial? Enough to muddy it." Jonas rubbed his jaw. "Won't matter unless someone speaks loud enough to drown him out." Delilah studied him. "You're going to speak." He didn't answer. "You need to, Jonas." "They won't listen." "Doesn't matter," she said. "You don't speak to convince the mob. You speak so the silence doesn't win." He looked away, jaw tightening. "I kept quiet once," he murmured. "Back during the war. A Union captain ordered us to burn a black family out of their home because they were harboring a Confederate deserter. I knew the truth, that the deserter was gone, that the woman had begged for mercy. I said nothing, stood there and let them torch her barn while her boy watched from the field. I can still hear him scream." Delilah stepped closer. "Then speak now. Not for them. For you." Thunder muttered again somewhere in the hills. The light outside grew thick, golden and grim. Jonas didn't speak again, but something in his face shifted. Not resolve. Something slower, more painful. A man unearthing a shovel he swore never to touch again. That evening. As the scout built a fire behind the stables and watched the horizon like it owed him blood, Delilah returned to the study. This time, she opened the tin box. Inside, Isaac's handwriting curled, like vines across scrap paper. Drawings of cattle, of stars, of a man with a crooked smile and a hat too big. Jonas. Her son had seen something worth admiring in him, had spoken of him in that brief, burning time between his arrival and Isaac's death like Jonas was a tale told in truth. She stared at those pages until her vision blurred. When she looked up, Jonas stood in the doorway. "You keep his voice in there?" he asked quietly. "I try." "Then maybe we use it." She nodded slowly, and for the first time, her shoulders dropped. "Let them come, Jonas. Let them try." He stepped into the room, the fire behind him flickering like a second heartbeat. "They'll be here by dawn, and we'll be ready." Lightning bloomed again, this time closer. The sky cracked, and across the hills, horses began to ride. The town of Tarragon Ridge stirred before dawn, long before the sun thought to rise. Oil lamps flickered behind dusty windows. Boots scraped against wooden floors, and rifles were checked with silent purpose. The courthouse loomed like a gallows shadow, its whitewashed cross stained amber by the slow creep of daybreak. And riding down from the ridge, 10 horsemen led by Jed Vorn entered the town like they owned it, because in their minds they did. Jed sat tall in the saddle, silver spurs catching the first light. He wore a charcoal duster and a cruel grin, his voice carrying as he barked orders to the 2 deputies at the church doors. The judge had been summoned early, the noose already prepared. He wanted the trial done before noon. He wanted Jonas swinging before the town had a chance to ask why. But Jonas Creed wasn't in the cell. He walked through the town square with Delilah beside him, each step measured, eyes straight, hands empty. He wore no chains, no visible weapon, just an old cavalry coat and the weight of his own name. The crowd watched in murmurs and side glances. Not all hostile now. Some curious, some unsure. Fear was still thick in the air, but it had begun to shift. Delilah carried a single document in her gloved hand. The ledger. Pages fluttered slightly as she walked, like the wind itself feared what was written. Inside the courtroom, the judge looked up, startled by their entrance. "You will be brought in under escort," he snapped. Jonas stepped forward. "I brought myself." The judge cleared his throat, eyes flicking to Jed, who had entered behind them. "Proceed, then. Let the trial reconvene." Jed moved to front row, spurs ringing, eyes locked on Jonas like a man already tasting the gallows dust. The judge called order. Witnesses were ignored, motions denied. No mention was made of the girl Darden had attacked, or the widow who'd seen him ride out bleeding. It was a noose trial, quick, neat, brutal. But Jonas didn't sit. He stepped forward. "I want to speak." The judge scowled. "This isn't a forum." Delilah stepped beside him. Under Section 4 Territorial Code, the accused may testify directly, unless the court wishes to make record of its bias. A pause, then a grudging nod. Jonas turned to face the room. His voice, when it came, was slow, steady, unshaken. "I didn't kill Bo Darden out of rage," he began. "I killed him because he drew on me after I stopped him from forcing himself on a girl not 2 minutes out of childhood. A girl who worked cattle better than most men I've seen. A girl who screamed, and no one listened but me." A hush fell like ash. "Bo hit her first," Jonas went on, "hard. Dragged her behind a haystack. She stabbed him with a branding hook. I pulled him off. He drew. I put him down." He looked directly at Jed. "You knew. You covered it, paid off the hands, burned the girl's bunk, and when I rode to warn Delilah, you made sure it was me the town saw running." Jed stood. "He's lying, making stories out of the dirt." Delilah stepped forward now, lifting the ledger high. "Then explain this," she said. "Proof of payouts from your ranch to Darden, illegal cattle tags, land deeds signed over from families who vanished overnight, your seal, your hand." She turned to the judge. "This town's justice is a bought thing, but the paper trail is about to stretch all the way to the governor's desk. And unlike you, he doesn't answer to Jed." The courtroom rippled. Jed reached for his pistol. He never got it out. A thunder crack rang out. Real thunder, not metaphor. And the scout, hidden in the balcony rafters, lowered his rifle. Jed's hat dropped first, then Jed himself, screaming with a hole through his shoulder. The courthouse exploded into movement. Deputies drew steel. The scout was already gone. Jonas ducked as a shot split the crucifix above, showering splinters. Delilah pulled a derringer from her sleeve and fired once, clean and calm, into the floor at the judge's feet. "Call this trial," she said. "Now." The judge, shaking, raised both hands. Charges dropped. Self-defense. It was over in seconds, but the echo of it hung longer. Jonas exhaled, chest tight, heart racing. Outside, townsfolk had gathered. Some expected a hanging. Others had come to see if Delilah Vorn would finally fall. But it wasn't her they stared at now. It was Jonas. He stepped out with his coat torn, dust on his cheek, blood, not his own, drying on his knuckles. And when he looked out over the gathered crowd, they didn't see a killer. They saw a man who stood. He didn't stay long. By sunset, he'd packed a saddlebag and mounted the horse the scout left behind. Delilah waited at the gate. "You're not staying," she said. "No," he replied. "Not even to run the south pasture? It's yours if you want it." He looked at her, a long, unreadable glance. "You didn't save me to chain me again." "I didn't save you at all," she said, voice soft. "You did that yourself. I just reminded you who you were." He touched the brim of his hat. "You ever get tired of fighting alone, you know where to find me." Then he turned his horse east, toward land where no one knew his name. As he rode off, thunder grumbled behind him one last time, like the sky itself offering closure. Delilah stood there long after the dust settled. A woman the world had tried to silence. A man the world tried to hang. Both still standing.